in any event, Bill Clinton, he failed in that, but with his efforts to do that, and also his efforts of Hillary Clinton, his wife, to do that, the black community embraced him, and also some other things. Now, he did do the welfare reform. He was pretty much backed into a corner by the Republican strategists and their ability to really put a lot of pressure uh, on that particular type of legislation that needed to, uh, well, 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 first of all, there was a need for it, but there was a very sinister way that it was being used to play the races against each other and play a political game with it. Basically saying that the welfare reform, when you would say welfare reform, and when you talk about the ins and outs of welfare reform, everybody and just about everybody, even white, black, even the blacks themselves, would always think, oh, they must be talking about black Americans. It's the blacks, because they're the ones that's on welfare. They're the ones that's receiving the food stamps. They're the ones that have the majority of the welfare mothers and all that. When actually the case, the facts of the matter is, it was just the opposite. It was the whites who had the majority that were on food stamps. It was the whites uh, that had the majority of the welfare mothers. It was the whites that had the majority of those handouts that was coming from the types of social uh, uh, safety nets and aid that was coming from the welfare system. But nonetheless, it was used as political fodder and strategies to push forward people's political agenda. Nevertheless, Bill Clinton signed into law the welfare reform, made it mandatory where many of the welfare recipients had to get training, had to begin that training process or had to complete that training process to continue to get welfare, and also the welfare would be on a limited basis. At a certain point, it would be cut off. Then you would have to get into the workforce and you'd have to be a part of that productive segment of society. Nonetheless, all of those things, and with the way that Bill Clinton and the rest of the Democrats maneuvered their policies and their talking points, that helped embrace a lot of the black Americans to give Bill Clinton that moniker of the first black president. Okay, and of course he was reelected, you know, uh, very popularly. He was reelected, even though he had a struggle to be elected the first time. He was popularly reelected the second time, and he is still a popular political figure, even though right now he and Barack Obama, especially with the entire process that Barack Obama and Ms. Clinton's wife had to go through, of course, in the last presidential race, Democratic primaries, that was pretty bitter, pretty brutal uh, primaries that they went through. But anyway, so they have a little enmity between each other, even though they're playing the nicey nice political game as they should, 45 days out uh, before the November 6th election date. So anyway, Barack Obama, first black president of the United States, first true black president of the United States, had to deal with that little dilemma too, as far as the comparisons and the different things that would be looked at as far as what that former president, Bill Clinton, who was quote unquote the first black president, even though he was really not the first black president, and then the true first black president, Barack Obama. So Barack Obama has had to walk quite a few little tightropes in this first 4-year process of being the first black president of the United States. But in any sense, and he still needs to be graded, and I'll give him the grade. Now I'm going to give him the grade as president of the United States, whether being black, white, or whatever. President of the United States, he gets a B minus. As president of the United States, he gets a B minus. Now, some people may say, well, why B minus? Well, I'm going to tell you why B minus. The first reason why a B minus is because he played one of the most efficient and effective and well played sleight of hand games with the two wars that he had inherited from the second Bush 43. Well, actually, he inherited a couple of little conflicts too, but the major two wars, the Iraq War and the war in Afghanistan. And what he did over his term in office, his first term in office, and the first 2.5 to 3 years of office, what he did, the way he strung that out and manipulated that out and used stealth strategy to actually cloak many of the things that the administration and the country was still doing, even with the presentation of promising to shut down Guantanamo Bay, bring all the troops home from Iraq, and shut down that conflict, that United States involvement in that conflict, and to ratchet down the war in Afghanistan, to actually turn it over to the Afghans, to Hamid Karzai and their whole bunch to run that country, that war torn, politically just depraved and drug infested and ridden country. So he did that, and he did it in a way that many of the past presidents used the media. They used uh, political talking points. They used military leaders. They used members of their cabinet. Some of them were sacrificed, you know, character-wise, and some of them even with their jobs, political jobs, to make this happen and make this digestible to the American public, and to have a counter argument to the opposition, the political opposition, as far as what they were constantly saying that Obama and his administration was not doing.